book says. Good morning. Live, Rabbi. I'm going to go get the books from upstairs. You're here for Shabbos, right?
Welcome back.
That's it. I'm leaving for Boca for a week.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'm in
Okay.
Florida. Actually, Boca's coming here. I hope tomorrow. I hope some family.
He emailed me 14 people.
14. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. The meet with
I mean, that's what they're
tomorrow.
planning.
Yeah, they're going to Rabbi at 11:30 tomorrow. Let's see if we can get them up in the morning.
Right. Okay. Whatever.
It's a nice thing. They're coming for one for this. They're ending at the Ohel Tuesday night. And then beginning on coming back to Florida.
A whole week. A whole week.
No, just one Monday,
Oh, one.
2 days, whirlwind, Shore, and then Brooklyn.
Wow.
This is like to eat Muncie tomorrow night to Fireside. They're going to fly Laxman, and from there going to Square Rabbi at 11:30. They get Wednesday morning. They're ending Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening at the Ohel. We're getting a flight back to Florida 2 days. There's very, very nice.
What are these chevra from the shul over there?
They're from the shul, and they're just guys who want to be machashik themselves.
Are they on Friday?
A bunch of them are coming from Boca Raton to learn something.
Oh, for here.
Yeah, I mean they're coming for 2 days to Muncie, New York, for Chizuk, so they're doing a whirlwind kind of tour. So they're trying, they're hoping to come tomorrow morning again. 10, 12, 14, we'll see how many people wake up in the morning.
It's early. Where are they sleeping?
All over the place. I have 5 sleeping in my house.
Uh-huh.
So instead of Boca Raton, they're going to be Boca Raton.
Boca, so yes. We barely touched that Irish Shabbos on one day. One paragraph.
Shekayach. say?
Spanish people here, they run to Florida.
He wants the farm to get out of the cold. They can never look away.
Finland is in the east. Finland is in the east. There's more Yiddish called in the east.
So we are, good morning everybody, Baruch Habayim, welcome. $238 on the bottom, second column closer to the bottom, 238. Closer to Vidal, v'omnam loy. The line starts Vidal, v'omnam loy kol adam zoichel l'maylas Avram b'tchila. Around 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 10 or 15 lines from the bottom. The line starts Vidal, v'omnam loy kol adam zoichel l'maylas Avram. 238. So the point was that there's the beginning of the Avodas Hashem, which comes with a certain sense of ego, if you wish, even though it's not the ego that we often hear about. But it's a certain sense of, let's call it, ambition. Ambition that comes from a desire to make the most out of one's life, desire for self-actualization, a desire for self-fulfillment, a desire to be close, and the lack and avoiding separateness and spiritual impoverishment, etc. And then there is the deeper state of bittul discussed. Avram Avinu matzasas levavai neman lefanecha, where in your presence there's lechatchila no separateness, there's complete oneness, and there's no I that is separate from you. So he says, as a result of Avram Avinu, but Tzasas Lavav and Amal Lefanach is right away v'charis imay habris losses as Heretz Aknani, Chiti, Amari, Prizi, Vusi, Gagashi, 7 nations which represent the 7 middas, 7 middas Sirayas, because in his presence there's no separateness. So all the 7 middas become completely aligned and conduits for their divine core, their divine source.
How do you learn from Lefanecha? Lefanecha, it sounds like it's separate. How do you learn that it's...
So the way the Balatanya teaches Lefanecha is Lefanecha in your face, in your presence, in front of you.
with you, sort of?
In other words, when it's in front of you, then it's Levavai, both hearts become completely Neman. Matzasas Lavavi with two bases, both hearts. There's no separateness. Of Amnam loikol adam zoichel amailas Avram betchila. And yet, not every person merits this quality of Avram, at least in the beginning. Kilavavai neman's hula acher shenishlam Avram b'mayla. This Levavai, what do we say right before Matzasas Levavai? We speak about the name change. These are all verses from Nehemiah, which were put into Psukkah de Zimra every morning. So he says, Atu Hashem levadecha, Ata sisas Hashemayim, etc. Ata mechayes kulam, tzva Hashemayim lecha mishtachlam. Atu Hashem halikim, Hashem b'charta ba'avram. You chose Avram without a hey. You took him out of Ur Kasdim. You changed his name to Avraham. You added the hey. Umatsasa, you found this Levavai Nema Lefanacha. So he says this Levavai is after you made his name Avram. After Avram became wholesome, became completed in his Maila, in his qualities. V'nikra Avram b'toisvus hey. V'hainu, which is la'achar shenimel. This was after his bris, his circumcision. Mashenkin Kaidum Shenimel, before the bris. Shenikra Avram. He was called Avram without the hay. Harayotzim Emenu Yishmael. At that point, Yishmael emerged from him because Yishmael was 13 years old at his bris. When Hashem told Avram Avinu to have a bris, he was 99. Yishmael was already 13 years old. He was born when Avram was 86. Right? That's what the Torah teaches us. So at this point, it was before bris, he was called Avram. After Yishmael is already born, Yotzim Emenu Yishmael. Yishmael emerges from him. At a later point, he's 99, 13 years later, Yishmael, Avram is told to have a bris, he has a bris, Yishmael has a bris. Shahu, Yishmael is Pchinas Klippa, the Chesed Elyon de Kedusha. Yishmael represents the Klippa, which means the shell, the husk, of Chesed Elyon, of the divine kindness, of Kedusha, of holiness. Yishmael had a very similar nature to Avram Avinu. In the sense that just like Avram was Chesed, Yishmael was also Chesed. He was extremely extroverted, as the Pasuk says, Yadai Bakoil, V'yad Kol Boy. He was out there. He had in many ways the qualities of his father. His father was, as we would say it in English, a people's person. Yishmael was out there. He had that quality that seemed very close to his father's quality. And it's interesting that Yitzchak actually had the opposite quality of his father, but not Yishmael. And it's brought, it says, Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram held us Yitzchak. So it actually says, what's the redundancy? So Rashi explains, one of the explanations is because the Litzanei Hadar, the scoffers of the generation, were saying that Yitzchak is not Avram Avinu's son. He's too old. So Ma'asa Kadosh Baruch Hu, what did Hashem do? Sar Klaster Panav Shal Yitzchak Daimel Avram. He painted, he sculptured the face of Yitzchak to replicate, to be similar to Avram. So Yitzchak ben Avram, but maybe not. So when you looked at him, you said, Avram Hailadas Yitzchak. It's not just a rumor that he's the son of Avram. Avram took him into the house, really, Avimelech Nesabra Sarah, really, it's from another father. Sarah was by Avimelech. No, Avram Hailadas Yitzchak, because you could see it on his face. The question, of course, it says, Ma'asa Kadosh Baruch Hu, what did Hashem do? It's not a miracle that a son should look like a father. Many of you sitting here, you look like your fathers, or your children look like you. Sometimes people say, Mama's your father. I knew who you were. You look just like your father. This is part of genetic traditions. One of the explanations is that the Chiddush here was a deeper one. Because in many ways, Yishmael looked like Avram Avinu. Not just in demeanor, and not just in his face, in his character. Yitzchak looked very much different than Avram Avinu. Because Avram Avinu was chesed, and Yitzchak was gvura. Avram was extroverted. Yitzchak was introverted. Avram was was the embodiment of kindness, and Yitzchak represented discipline and strength, yira, awe, reverence. It was a whole different avodah. Yishmael on the surface seemed much closer to Avram Avinu. He seemed more like the ear, the proper yoirish of Avram Avinu. The pnimi, on a deeper level, though, it wasn't that case, because by Yitzchak and Avram, the nekuda was avodas Hashem. It was expressed in different ways, but that was the nekuda. The point was avodas Hashem. And by Yishmael was also had the element of chesed, but as he puts it here, it's klippa the chesed in the kedusha. It has the husk, the external elements of chesed of kedusha. Levish Avram haya merkava lebchinas chesed in the kedusha. And Yishmael comes from him, because Avram was a chariot. A chariot means a conduit, just like a merkava, a chariot carries the person. That's its sole function. Avram was a merkava lebchinas chesed ali in the kedusha, for the chesed of Hashem, which is chesed of holiness, love of holiness. That's why he tells Hashem, when Hashem says you're going to have an ear, a yoidish, he says, Lu Yishmael yichil lefanecha. My hope is that Yishmael should live lefanecha. Again, the word lefanecha is used. Yishmael should live before you. Shein b'chinas moisri hachesed. Yishmael represents the moisri, the residues of the chesed of Avram. The Hainu, what he was asking for, shi'oir hachesed mispashit gam lamato. The oir of his chesed should extend, it should permeate. Gam lamato, it should go even below liyos Yishmael. To become Yishmael and to enlighten Yishmael, lefi shebekoyach hachesed elyon lihis later the lispashit atachlis amadnega yeset tachtayna. Because that's the function of chesed. The function of chesed is the power of chesed is to go down, to descend, and to extend until the lowest places. That's what the quality of chesed is. Chesed is, on its own, is unbridled, untamed kindness, chesed, and therefore on its own it goes and continues and won't stop. Like the Gemara says, Ma mayim is chesed, mayim yordim b'makom gavoy. It will always find the lowest plane, and it will reach there. So chesed on its own will not be tamed, and therefore it will extend everywhere and to everybody. Ki lefi erech haremamos v'hagdula shenikra chesed einay toifus makom lefanav kachashei chakeir. And the more chesed, the more this quality will be found there, because relative to the exaltedness, the sublimity of gedula, which is also called chesed, l'cha Hashem hagdula v'hagvura v'atiferes. Chesed is often associated and interchangeable with the word gedula. The greater a person is, the more exalted, the more aloof. Einay toifus makom lefanav kachashei chakeir. So then, often wrongdoings or negativity don't occupy a space. Darkness is like light because he is so beyond, and therefore nothing occupies space. So darkness could be like light. Ukeinyan, the concept, the pasuk says in the Mishlei, Shlomo Melech says, Smomis biyadayim sesapes v'hi behechlei melech. Shlomo Melech in Mishlei tells us to learn from different insects or rodents or animals. He wants us to learn from ants, and he also says to focus on a smomis. A smomis is explained by most as a spider. Spider, some say a lizard. Smomis biyadayim sesapes. Literally, it means she grabs, she fetches with her hands. Vihi behechle melech, and she remains in the chamber, in the internal sanctuary, the chamber of the king. The Mefarshim struggle. What is Shlomo Melech trying to bring out about the spider? What is this biyadayim sesapes? Some say that she could climb cliffs, she could climb straight walls, because with her legs she could just attach herself to any surface. No difference what type of surface, whether the surface is horizontal or the surface is vertical. That's one interpretation. The Vilna Gaon interprets it, interestingly, Smomis b'yadayim zesapes. that a spider weaves her web from the material that's within herself, within itself, which is one of the most extraordinary phenomena of nature. I don't know if you ever studied spider webs. Most people, when they come across a spider web, all they feel is annoyed. But instead of being annoyed, you should stop and marvel at the phenomenon that a little spider that sometimes the size of a, here I go with my nature stuff, the size of the thumbnail can find within itself. Usually every animal, a bird builds a nest, it goes to bring material from trees, it brings branches, it collects it. Every animal that builds a pen, a den, a safe haven, a nest, it's always with materials that it brings from outside of the world. Besides the spider has within its own little tiny body, and they still can't figure out how. It has the ability to be able to daily, sometimes a few times a day, to weave together a web of silk, and some of the most expensive silk in the world, and within its body you could make a web of 700 meters or more. Crazy stuff. And this becomes its domain, and also, of course, the trap that allows it to have its breakfast and lunch and dinner from all the insects, bugs that may come to visit the web. And this type of silk is considered one of the strongest fibers in the world. They say stronger than steel. And it's all in the body. So the Vilna Gaon says, Mom is biyadayim. She all does this with her own hands. She doesn't need anybody else. What's the Vihi Behechle Melech? She's in the chamber of the king. Vihi Behechle Melech. It's an interesting juxtaposition. So the Balatanya, he teaches his own teach. He says, Mishum da hasmamis la'oitzem koiten erka hi behechle melech hamirumim v'loy makbid Allah. Chuli v'dayla meve. V'hi behechle melech is a pella. The melech, the king, usually come into Achashverosh's palace uninvited, and he doesn't stretch out the scepter. Achas dase lahamis, a person can come out with a head shorter. Yet spiders manage to create their webs everywhere. Even Behechle Melech, in the most private, innermost chamber of the king, you'll often find a spider web. Why? So that's what Shlomo Melech is describing, because La'otzim koiten erka hi Behechle Melech. He's not makbid on it. Because it's so small, it becomes insignificant. So therefore, he allows it to be. Even though you would think, we come to spider web, Behechle Melech, but nonetheless, on the contrary, because it's Behechle Melech, because it's the Melech, and the Melech is the king, so the spider web, it doesn't have significance, it doesn't occupy space, that the Melech should become perturbed by it. He lets it be. Where other creatures wouldn't. There's a medrash that David HaMelech wondered, what's the point of a spider web? Why did Hashem create a spider web? Even though it's the way that the spider lives, but what's this whole, grandiosa thing of the spider web? And the medrash says that Hashem said, you'll see, it's going to save your life. When he was running away from Shaul HaMelech, he ran into one of the caves, and a spider came and weaved a web over the cover of the cave. And Shaul's people came and they said there couldn't be anybody here in this pit, because then the web would be broken. So obviously nobody's here, and they left. So the spider web actually saved the king's life, the Melech's life. In other words, it's quite a feat.
But he prefaces the pasuk by saying Ki'inyan, as though he's trying to demonstrate that this is this very difficult to understand idea of Chesed is so powerful as Gdula, is therefore going to be mispashe to the Madrega. I don't see how it all flows. I mean, Ki'inyan, how is this pasuk demonstrating his earlier point that Koach Chesed Elyon has the power to mispashe?
Right. Because he's saying, what's the connection? He says, Lefi erech harevim was v'agdul shnikre chesed, einei teufes mokum lefonov kechashecha kaira. Because it's so great, so pettiness doesn't occupy any space. So even the smumness doesn't occupy any space. He doesn't bother getting rid of it, because it doesn't matter. Sometimes you have, like, by people, you have two types of people. You have people who are micro people. You have people who are macro people. Yeah. Let's talk about two forms of education. There are people, everything their child does, they notice. Some people notice it with a microscope, and some people just notice it. Anything that anybody ever says to them, they notice. Yeah. They're very micro people. Some people are more macro people. They don't. A lot can go on. Let's say companies. Some people run companies, mamish. They micromanage. They know when the janitor walked in. It could be 3,000 people in the company. But he knows if there's a piece of paper on the floor, and he knows if somebody came 5 minutes late. They know mamish every detail. Some people are very, very different. They zoom out completely. They look at the big picture, and the details of anything, of any situation, doesn't matter to them. And sometimes it has to do, it has its advantages, it also has its vices. The advantage we understand. People who are so micro, they make everybody crazy, and they make themselves crazy. They obsess on details. But you said this, but you said this, but you didn't say this. They hear everything, they notice everything, they comment on everything. Nothing escapes them. Yeah. Some of you have grown up in homes like that, and some of you have grown up in homes that are exact opposite than that. Yeah. There are fathers who notice everything, and there are fathers who notice some, like once in 10 years they'll notice something. Oh, you're getting married tomorrow? Okay. Shatayva Mutzlachas, you have a bar mitzvah? Fine. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, so sometimes it comes because of different challenges. But here the point is that sometimes a person who's very, very big, actually, little stuff don't concern them. And you say, but there's a spider web. Oh, leave me alone with spider webs. Got to change the world. I don't have time for spider webs. Sometimes very, very big people, because they're so big, they're also very aloof. So the details don't matter. When details don't matter, a lot of spider webs could grow in companies and grow in homes because they're big. It's a beautiful, beautiful virtue because they're not obsessive. They're not small. Some people, they notice everything because they're petty. Everything gets to their soul. This is where they live. They live in smallness. They live in smallness. So small things is where they live. This is their sandbox. Other people, they have what's called a breitkeit, a broadness, an expansiveness. That's what he's calling the Gedula here.
So how's that going to help Yishmael get the chesed from Avraham?
So his point is Avram Avinu was that type of person. Avram Avinu was such a big person that a person like Yishmael could flourish in his presence and he could remain there. With Yitzchak that wouldn't happen. With Sarah it didn't happen. The Gemara describes him of a Basra that Rabbi went into Maris Machpelah. It's a very interesting Gemara. Rabbi went to Maris Machpelah. You know the story. The Sechta Baba Basra, towards the end, Rabbi went into Maris Machpelah. Rabbi was one of the Tanoim, and he saw Sari Meinu sitting and taking out the lice from Avram Avinu's ear. That's a Gemara in Baba Basra, sitting and taking out the lice. A Gemara. The Balatanya says elsewhere, which he's going to explain here. Now, what's this Gemara about? And the idea is that was really Sarah with Avram Avinu. It's a representation of the relationship between Sarah and Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was so filled with chesed. He said, Lu Yishmael Yichla Fanecha. He was very upset that Yishmael should leave the house. By Avram, there's room for everybody. Avram's tolerance was infinite because his chesed was infinite. He didn't have those boundaries that Sarah said. Sarah said, "Lo yirash ben Amma azoysim b'niyim yitzchak." The apostle said, "Vayera Avram." Avram was distressed. He was not happy. Hashem told him, "Kol hashatay melecha Sarah shma b'koila." Whatever Sarah says, listen. So Avram obliged. But the Torah makes a point of saying that this was not his initiative. From his vantage point, this was off. So the Baal Tanya is explaining why it didn't come because Avram didn't care about Yitzchak. Avram was so large, he was so big, that spider webs can gather up. And spider webs, and it's a very important metaphor, because what's a spider web? Spider web looks very, very elegant. I mean, it's an architectural feat. Spiders are the greatest architects on our planet. And they know when they're born, they know what architects who have studied architecture for 70 years don't know. I mean, their architecture and how they do it, etc., is incredible. It's not a shir about spider webs, but it's important to understand this. On the other hand, it's a trap. It's a trap if you have ended up in a good spider web and you're a little bug. It's mamish, it's an issue of life and death. And it comes with glue and saliva and moist. It's like, it's a feat. It has a lot of components to it. So spider webs represent something. But in the heichel of the melech, in this sense of Avram Avinu, they can flourish and they can grow. Nobody says a word. So Yishmael also can flourish and grow. And that's the detachment that comes from being great. But it has its vices, like everything in the world. Some people are very, very big. They're big, they're global. They're global, they're not local. So on a local level, infections can grow. That's what happens. Dirt can gather, filth can gather. You see it constantly in education. Some parents they're big people. I'm not talking about detachment because of carelessness or selfishness or dysfunctionality or illness, etc. I'm talking about as a result of looking at the bigger picture, bigger things. And when you only look at that, what happens is on a small micro level, a lot of things can happen.
So there are people that combine both.
Well, that's a very deep quality to be able to combine both. It's not a simple thing. Because usually macro people are not micro people. They're allergic to it. Like, leave me alone with details. I get migraine headaches. Leave me alone. Don't go there. We talk big picture stuff. And then there are those who will not stop obsessing. And it's very difficult with them. And this is where they live. They live in pettiness. They live in smallness. But you did it. And they know everything. And they hold cheshbonos. They know what everybody told them in the last 29 years. And, it becomes very detailed oriented people. I mean, you see how they pack their suitcases when they have to go on a trip. You'll see two types of people. And there's many more examples, but...
There are some great people. I've met one, for sure, like Bill Gates. He was very much a person, but he knew every detail.
Okay.
That's why Bill Gates.
Okay, I'm glad you found an example.
Yeah, I found a very rare example in my life.
Yeah. So here we now come. Why is this so relevant here with Avram? Because now we come here to another dimension of the ego we were talking about. V'zeu hatam. This is the reason, from a spiritual perspective. Shetzarich Talmud Chacham liyus by gasas haruach chelik aleph misamach dalet. Why the Talmud Chacham has to have what we call some haughtiness, at least one part of 64. Shminis shebeshminis, which is an eighth of an eighth, which is the 64th part. So till now we explained why, and this he's going to get more involved in this later in Siv Dalet and Hey, because that's how the beginning of Avodah happens. The beginning of Avodah begins with ambition, with self-actualization, but it's really much deeper than this. The Hine Yadu, it's known, the idea is Harusa de Lasate, is Harusa de La'ela. The arousal from below creates an arousal from above. Meaning, Nase ba'oisa hadugma mamish. The Hisoirus from below creates a replica mamish above. It's like a mirror. It's a mirror image. When you move your body in a particular way, it's going to be replicated mamish in the mirror. Not a similar concept. It's going to take a picture and make a copy. It's going to be, why? Because it's like a mirror image. When we say Isarusa de Lasati, Isarusa de La'ela, it means that man and God are, so to speak, mirrored. So the experience below, the same thing happens above. It's not like a similar thing or something that comes close, or it's a semblance, it's a reminder, it's a commemoration, it's episymbolic. Nase be'oisa digma mamash. Ki ruach, aisi ruach v'amshech ruach. The expression of the Zohar. Because it's one ruach, it's one energy. So the ruach below, aisi ruach, brings the ruach v'amshech ruach and accesses the ruach. It would be like it says in Tanya, Yaakov chevel nachalasa. Ki chelik Hashem amay, Yaakov chevel nachalasa. Yaakov is the rope of his inheritance. So the Tanya explains, also the Nefesh HaChaim actually great at length, that when you have a rope, and imagine the rope extends from the top of the Empire State Building all the way to the bottom, and you give a shake. You shake the rope on the bottom, so the impact is felt all the way on top. You'll say, what's the connection? This person is all the way down below. But there's a rope. Yaakov chevel nachalosai. What happens down here, a person's rope, you shake it, it creates a ripple effect on all the levels, on all the stratas, all the madregas, all the way to the top. B'meila. V'hine. B'sarusa de l'sata zeh b'talmid chacham. So when this Talmud Chacham has a shminis shebeshminis, this sense of self that we're speaking about, nasi sarusa d'leila, this creates the exact same experience above. This shminis shebeshminis of the Talmud Chacham, what is it? The sense of, I desire a good life for myself, which is what we're talking about. The beginning of Avodas Hashem is, I don't want to live, I don't want to be gypped, I don't want to be deprived, I want to live a good life. As we explained, what's the beginning of Avodas Hashem? The beginning of Avodas Hashem is, I don't want to be a shmata, I don't want to live like a shmata, I could do much better for myself. That's the experience of Shminis Shebeshminis. As he put it before, that the person values who he is or she is. And the person appreciates the potential of themselves. And how much they can achieve. And the lack of it if they don't work. And that's there's a motivation. I have options in life. And I want to choose an option that is going to be the best of the best. Because I consider myself and my life and my time valuable, and without that, you can't enter into the realm of serving God. You're too depressed, you're too sad, you're too cynical, you have too much insecurity. So real Avodas Hashem must be based on the premise of true confidence, not fake confidence, but true confidence. True self-confidence. So you could think, okay, yeah, of course you begin with this way because you want a person. He says it's much deeper than this. This creates the same sensation by Hashem. Creates the same sensation isarusa de laela. That what? Lias lamaila gamkein b'chinas geius v'isnasas b'kdush al yaina. The shminis of the Talmud Chacham creates kivayachal, a sense of haughtiness above in Kedusha. A sense of geus, exaltedness, hisnasus, aloofness.
Is Sarusa is experience or it's
arousal, is oirus, awakening, the awakening. When the Talmud Chacham in the beginning of his Avodah experiences gasus, what's gasus? Gasus means arrogance, haughtiness, pride. What did we explain as this gasus? It's not a form of narcissism and being disagreeable and impossible. But the gasus means I don't want to separate, I want to be close. That's what gasus means. It's in his definition of gasus aruach. I don't want to be separated, I want to be close. Why is it called gasus? Two things. First of all, there's an option. Second of all, there's I. So it's called gasus, but it's gasus. Gasus means there's a certain coarseness, there's a certain separateness. And I don't want to be separate. I want to be close. That experience. What does it do above to Hashem? Same thing. Lias Moyes Barishim, that Hashem should say, I don't want there should be dirt in my house. The ace of the behavior is I don't like. I don't want spider webs. I don't want the behavior of Esav around me. Mipnei ki goy go, koloima misgo, mistalik min agayim v'emar rishayim. That's the idea. Shira Hashem ki goy go. What's goy go? Go means gayim, right? He nase shofar to Oretz Hashav Gemul al gayim, right? We say in the Shir Shal Yom of Wednesday. Gayim are the arrogant ones. Those who blow, those who are very haughty and pride and full of arrogance. So ki goy go means he becomes go above the go. In other words, I'm not interested in this. This is what the Gemara says in Psachim. Not like Avram, from whom Yishmael came out. Because when you're so big, Yishmael and his mices don't have chashivos, don't have significance. In the chamber of the king, spider webs can flourish. This is when he doesn't become exalted, when he doesn't develop his own, so to speak, holy haughtiness. When he becomes more exalted, as I noisen lev ledaktek, then he becomes meticulous, then he becomes micro. I don't want that wickedness should get nurture from my energy. I don't want that. I become discriminating. I say this is good and this is not good. Huh? I don't know, you don't kill a spider, but you can get rid of the web. You know, you don't kill spiders. That's not appropriate.
So then he's being both macro and micro. I mean,
so in other words, the macro descends into restricts itself into a more micro level. You just said that the spider hangs out and weaves its webs with its hands in the chamber, chuli, meaning the end of the pasuk. That's because nobody is supervising it. Nobody cares. There's no providence. Don't bring a big king to supervise a spider web. Doesn't even notice it. But when he becomes in a mode where he, when it comes spring cleaning, we're going to clean up the palace. He's not going to leave it in the chamber. He's going to tell them to take it away. But this is only when the Melech reaches a place of geius, of even more exaltedness. Then he doesn't want to accept these klippos. But when he's not in a state of exaltedness, everything is like non-existence. Doesn't occupy space. So what happens? So everybody can receive, including parasites. There's no discrimination. Why? Because he's so infinitely great. Because he's so infinitely great, so paradoxically, nothing occupies any space. So light, darkness. So therefore, Avram's greatness allows for Yishmael to flourish, and that's where the lice attach itself to the hair. So the Gemara says, what was Sarah's job? To take out the lice from Avram's hair. V'dayla maven. V'zel, this is Pshad, the Pasuk says in Yeshaya, I think Perek Chavav, Hashem Rama Yadcha Bal Yechizoyim. The Mefarshim also struggle with this pasuk. The Rashi says it's hard to understand. Yeah, I think Rashi says it's a hard pasuk to understand. Rama Yadcha, your hand is uplifted, exalted. Bal Yechizoyim, they shouldn't see. What's Pshat? So the Balatanya teaches as follows. Pirush. Davke kashayama yadcha b'chinas reimamas v'geyos. Only when your hand goes up high, azai bal yechizoyin harushayim oir eliki. Then wickedness will not perceive the divine light. Because he will not allow them to receive. Rom al kol goyim Hashem. Mashenase mehem rom umisnase. Lefi shehu goy goy dafka kana. The only time it will be rom al kol goyim Hashem. What's rom? Rom is Misnase, exalted, aloof, sublime. It's because, as we said, Goy, he's Go above the Go. So what does all this mean? This means it's not just that the spiritual haughtiness of the Talmud Chacham is a compromise in order to get him into Avodas Hashem or get her into Avodas Hashem. But rather, this has what we would call cosmic significance. Why does it have cosmic significance? Because what happens by the person is mirrored kivayachal by the divine. In a person, what's the difference? A person with this gasus and not this gasus, as we explained. There's a person who feels they neglect their lives. Why do they neglect their lives? They neglect their lives because they don't take their life seriously. They don't see themselves as having true value. So why should I take my life seriously? So you let it go. At a deep place, people who live frivolous, irresponsible lives, deep down, there's a death sentence that they gave themselves. Nothing really matters. The whole Nakud of Avodas Hashem begins where? I matter. Those two words. I matter. You matter. You matter. Deep down, a person may feel, I don't matter. If I don't matter, so then whatever goes, goes. Then it's basically just trying to survive or be as comfortable as possible or numb as much pain as possible. So the beginning of Avodah, he says, is the sense I matter. Now that seems like two simple words, but it's not two simple words. Because a lot of behaviors that people do is a symptom of the fact that deep down I'm struggling with the fact that I don't really matter. Or I just give up on myself. Too much. It's too much. So even though I know that what I may be doing is toxic, or certainly unproductive or destructive, Abbasagate, it goes. This is what I'm used to. So the beginning of Avodas Hashem is a protest against that. What's the protest? The protest is based on the premise. There's a person here. There's a real person. I matter. I make a difference. There's a purpose in me. There's real value in me. I can do something for God. He actually cares. I want to make my life into something. That's what ambition is. Ambition means there is an I that's ambitious. When there's no I, what ambition? You just you lay low until you die. You're finished. Whether it's physically or emotionally. Ambition means I strive. I want to grow. I want to become something. As he says, this is far from the ultimate avodah, but it's always the genesis of Avodas Hashem. Without this, nothing happens. What's the antithesis of this? Everything goes. Everything goes.
How could Abraham start everything fail in this?
The word is not fail. The word is not fail. The word is every person, every great person brings out a certain quality in life. You have Avraham, you have Yitzchak, you have Yaakov, you have Reuven, you have Shimon, you have Levi. It's not fail. Avraham Avinu personified a certain quality, and that quality we learn from. That quality remains with us forever. So from a person's perspective, what does the I matter do? It means I don't want to get stuck in spider webs. What's a spider web basically? It's traps. Spider creates very elegant traps in order to hunt down its insects. And Ataka sits like a melech. I don't know if you ever watched. The spider sits in its den and it waits for the bugs to come, and then it comes, it gets entangled. It never has to, the lion, the animals in the jungle get very messy and bloody, and they have to chase. The spider doesn't do it. You come to me, but I'm melech. You come to me, you get stuck, you start making dust, you start running, the glue gets you stuck and trapped, and then when he's ready for the next meal, he comes down and he eats his prey. Mamash like a melech. V'hi be'echlei melech, efritzach like a melech. So we get stuck in these types of webs of life. Why? Because I surrender. I resign. It's called resignation. Resignation. That's what we said a few times. The Chatzker Rebbe said what they call prikas oil, I call atzvus. They call it prikas oil. They don't have God's yoke. What I call it really is depression. It's a form of atzvus. And it's you see it in people. They become cynical. They just too much pain in life. And the pain represents that ultimately nothing I could do accomplish anything, especially if you were put down half of your life and you're still being put down, at least in your own mind, you put yourself down. So what's the result of that? The result of that is not you become a better person. The result of that is you become a shmata person. Just like you see it constantly psychologically, there are people who are always allow themselves to be used. And then they get upset. Why you allow yourself to be used? Why you allow yourself to be used? And then you get upset. The reason is, of course, because the person simply doesn't have a sense of I. When there's no sense of I, there's no boundaries. There's no boundaries, everything comes in. And if everything comes in, so I allow myself to be manipulated, even though when I know it's happening. But I simply don't have the courage, or I may feel I don't have the right. I may not have the right, or I don't have the courage, or I don't have the strength. However, it's manifested itself. And what happens? The person ends up stuck more and more and more in webs that trap them and kill them and destroy them. Bad habits that people do. People do things at night, the middle of the day, stupid things. They know when they're doing it, it's stupid. And 10 minutes later, you're going to regret it. And to Araya tomorrow night, you're going to need more. So what's the point? The point is, I lost the Tzuras Adam. I don't believe in myself. I don't think I can have a better life. I don't really believe it. Or maybe even if I do believe it somewhere, but there's so much pain, and people run. They run to Fasgulas, and they run to Mekubalim, and they run to Shiurim, and they run to Tzaddikim, and they run to websites, and they run to Kivrei Tzaddikim, and they run here 40 days, and here 40 days, and then they do Tanesim and Segufim. And it gets worse. Because at the core, there's no self. At the core, there's no self. And no Kabbalist, and no Tzaddik, and no Zgula, and no Kameya in the world can fill that. That you have to fill within yourself and your relationship to yourself and God. Nobody can do that for you. Nobody. Even a therapist can't do that for you. And even this shiur can't do this for you. Huh? Spider websites. We can talk about it, but nobody can do this for you. This is a very personal, intimate journey. When I don't have that, I become neglectful. It's called in Hebrew, there's a word muznach. You know what muznach is? Abgelazen. Huh? Spurned. I become neglectful. All avodas Hashem is, the beginning of all avodas Hashem, the genesis, the foundation, the Baal HaTanya says is a protest against this. The 4 worst words that are the greatest enemy to any life of growth is, Mi ani umani. Who am I and what am I? Who am I? A piece of garbage. What am I? A bigger piece of garbage. Both me, Ummah, same thing. And you have good proof to it. You have good proof because there's people who have told this to you, and there's people who still tell it to you, and the most important person is you who tell it to yourself. You don't even realize you're telling it to yourself. So what does a person, the shminis shebeshminis that he's talking about? The shminis shebeshminis is that there's a sense of I that wants to choose good for itself. I want to be close to God. I don't want to be separate. I want a life. I want to be busy living. I don't want to be busy dying. In the famous expression.
Why only a shmini?
Ah.
If it's for a good cause.
So why only a shminish b'shminis? Du willst haben a ganze Sach.
You're going in the right direction.
Eina chenami. In other words, for some people, this is the tachlis. This is it. As we'll soon see, Perek Dalet, Perek Hey, there's something much deeper. But this is the beginning. Because if you go to step 2 without step 1, it's shminish b'shminis because there's something much deeper. But you still have to start with the shminish b'shminis. But now here we have the final nekuda here in Siv Gimel was, it's not just, if you're a shmata, you're going to be neglectful. Something now else happens. And this is where we see, my modern of the Alter Rebbe, that even There's no such a thing as a compromise in Avodas Hashem because of a Nebuch case. In other words, because if not, you're going to be a Nebuch, so therefore we're going to compromise, we're going to let you have a Sheminis B'Sheminis. If it's an Inyan in Avodah, so then it's Negeya all the way Lamaila Maila. In other words, it has a real emes in it. What's the real emes in it? The real emes in it that it achieves a tremendous function, not only for you, but a tremendous function in the entire cosmic plan. Because by Hashem you have a similar thing, but for an opposite reason. He's also neglectful. He's also neglectful. What says he's neglectful? He's so big. The spider webs flourish. I'm neglectful because I think I don't matter. But sometimes you're so infinitely big that pettiness and smallness can flourish and occupy space. Avram, Yatzav Menu Yishmael. Sarah is like, no, he can't be in the house. Avram's arms are big enough to embrace everybody and everything. You see in the Jewish community, Ad Hayom, you see two different streams. There are people who are just filled with love. Yeah? Their hearts are so gigantic. There's nobody who's off limits. Nobody. Yishmael, just give him a couple of hugs. Not one hug. He needs a few hundred hugs. Right? You say Shlomo Kalbach was once in a prison, and he told a story, I think. And he went to a maximum security prison, and his derech was to hug and kiss everybody. So on the way out, he hugged and kissed every prisoner, holy brother, and there was this big guy, close to 7 feet, muscular, his muscles bulging. He looked like an Oig Melech Habash, and you didn't want to start up with him in a dark alley. And as he was walking by, he saw this fellow. So his escort said, better stay away from him because, he's a dangerous guy and he's already put down many people in prison. He's taking them out, as they say. So Shlomo says, no, I want to go over to him. Goes to him, he says, holy brother, I want to give you a hug. Now, Shlomo Kalbach, relative to him, looked like a little mouse, a little spider, a little midget. But he gave him a hug, and he kissed him, and he hugged him for a long time. And then he went off. And the man says, Rabbi, come back. He says, could you give me another hug? Can you give me? And he gives him another long hug. And he finishes, and the man says, it's the first time in my life I got a hug. It's the first time in my life I got a hug. And he said, and who knows if I would have gotten some more hugs, if my life would have not turned out differently. So you have that approach. There are people whose arms are infinitely large. It doesn't, and then there are people the opposite. Their arms have no place for very, very few people. There's a very tight grip. Very few people go into their embrace. So here you have neglectfulness that comes from the opposite. Not because I'm a shmata. Again, the mirror image of I'm nothing and therefore everything goes. What is it, Lamaila? Lamaila is Hashem is so big, he's so infinite. Your mitzvahs and the other person's deeds, it would seem, what's the difference? It's so small, it's so insignificant. Lagabi infinity, who cares? There's a medrash Rabbi, very, very strange medrash. Parshas Bereshis. He separated between light and darkness. He saw that light was good. So the medrash says, Oir is my saying shall tzadikim, choshech is my saying shall rishayim. Eini yodeya be'ezem mehen chafetz. I'm not sure which one he wants. Vayara lekim es ariki toiv, that he wants my saying shall tzadikim. What's the suffix? One of the explanations is, and this is important to understand, and it could become a dangerous thought, to really think that for God there's a difference, this or this. How micro do you want to make him? You do this, this one does this. What's the difference? Like you tell me tell an ant, make a right, don't make a left. And if the ant makes a left, you go crazy and you lose yourself. It's Mashiach. And this is an ant relative to a person, which is finite. A person relative to God. So what happens here? In Avram's greatness, in his super greatness, there's place for Yishmael. In God's infinity, there's place for everything. So in a way, it becomes neglectful. But why neglect? Neglect is the fact that the king is so big that spiders are not noticed. What happens when a Jew says, I matter? I matter. You pick yourself up and you say, no, this doesn't belong in my life. I don't want dirt in my life. I remember I was once eating something that I shouldn't have eaten. So my wife told me, it's interesting. You respect the garbage can more than you respect yourself. Why don't you put that in the garbage? I don't want to waste it. She said, it's interesting. Your body you'll put this garbage into. But the garbage can you won't put it into. You respect the garbage can more than you respect your body. It should be the other way around. We still have the same argument. What does the beginning of Hashem means? Respect yourself more than you respect the garbage can. I don't want this in my life. I don't deserve this. I'm better than this. I'm better than this. And therefore you say, this is not for me. I do discriminate. This is not going to be me. And that's why there's no creativity without discipline. The most spiritually macro global people, if they don't have discipline, everything ultimately gets oizgalosh and their fires get extinguished. So he says here, what happens then is, Kivayachal b'Hashem, the same thing happens. He says, really? This doesn't belong in my world either. This doesn't belong here. When the Jew says this doesn't belong here, what's the mirror image? He says, Moyes b'Yerushalayim, es Esav Sanesi. Ki goy go. There's no place for this negativity. There's no place. There's not room for everything. Some things don't go. The smamis has to get removed from the king, because mitzad the infinity, everything goes. So in a way there is neglect. So the exaltedness of the person, the sense of exaltedness, creates kivayachal in Hashem. The macro, the micro, the ability to restrict himself and say, this doesn't belong in my world. That's what it does. When you say those two words, I matter, there's a ripple effect that reverberates in all of the worlds to be able to remove the toxicity, the dirt that has gathered as a result of the absolute infinity of Hashem, for which really nothing becomes significant to say, this is better, this is worse, this has no place. Everything has a space. Everything goes. But when the person can develop that shminish b'shminis, it has that effect also. L'mayla also above.
Very interesting. Obviously, you mentioned in Lechem, but Ramban really argues very subtly with how Rashi learns, and he very much is saying the same thing Ramban says. That obviously Ramban reads really that God channels the Avos Mitos in his supervision of the cosmos and his creating the world. And it's not just that they show God around, so to speak, they carry God.
Right.
But Mamishly God channels the Avos.
The Midas, yeah.
Created with dual and work.
Yeah.
Mamish how he learns like Ramban learns.
Yeah.
Motion of the spider, they're sitting there. Something missing. Spiders are poison. And more or less, some spiders are too lethal. And so when it gets trapped, it attacks something.
The poison of the spider.